I'm just an average girl with an average life. I work from 9 to 5. Hey, hell, I pay the price. All I want is to be left alone in my average home. But why do I always feel like I'm in the twilight zone? I always feel like somebody's watching me, and I have no privacy. Whoa. I always feel like somebody's watching me. Tell me, is it just a dream? Whoa. It's close to midnight. Something evil's lurking in the dark. Ooh, under the moonlight, you see a sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream as terror takes the sound before you make it. You start to freeze as horror looks you right between the eyes. You're paralyzed, 'cause this is love, thriller night, and no one's gonna save you from the beast about to strike. They know it's thriller night. You're fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight. Night creatures call and the dead start to walk in their masquerade. Escaping the jaws of the alien this time. Open wide. This is the end of your life. Ow!
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand.
A power outage had snuffed out the lights. Not a leaf moved in the shimmering heat of that June night. I leapt out of bed to check on the power points in the house, walked down the corridor and looked at the meter box, its wires crisscrossed like Medusa curls, glanced at the inverter, and having found nothing out of order, went back to the comfort of my bed. An acrid smell, reminiscent of a funeral pyre clawing at dead flesh, woke me up again. I scrambled to see what had caught fire, but nothing seemed to be amiss. A while later, the burning smell was back. Only this time, I could visualize the swirl of smoke, its stench nauseating and overpowering, making me lightheaded and giddy. I prodded Punita awake, resentful of her ability to sleep through it all. The two of us checked every plug and power connection, the electricity meters, the fuse box, and fridges, and found nothing. The next morning, when I related what had transpired, Punita shared her story. She and her colleague Urmila had been experimenting with the occult for some time, and day after day, they invited passing souls through their Ouija board, peering into the past and hoping to foretell the future. On this fateful day, as they reached out, a traumatized soul in the form of a little girl came rushing through, engulfed in flames, frantic and terrified, trying to escape the lived tragedy that had consumed her and her family. Earlier that day in Green Park Market, a stone's throw from our neighborhood, the Upar cinema tragedy had played itself out. 59 people lost their lives in the tragedy that day, and over 100 were injured. The tragedy had occurred on Friday the 13th. The morning after the tragedy, sitting out in the balcony, we witnessed 4 bodies, shrouded in white, being loaded into a truck from a building a few houses up the road. The family members were consoling one another. We could hear the loud laments of the grandfather, mourning the young lives that had been snuffed out way before their time. The girl who appeared to Punita and Urmila had lost her life in the Upahar fire. She was terrified and in constant motion, running from the flames. At that time, Punita and Urmila hadn't quite fathomed the tragedy that had taken place and had tried to calm her down. But the girl wouldn't stay still, caught up in the horror that surrounded her, desperate to escape. They entreated her to move towards the light, sent her light and love to calm her, but she was too frantic to listen to them. They ended their session and shut down the board, not quite realizing that the soul had found nowhere to go. The next morning, they meditated and sent her healing love and light and helped her find a path to a new dimension.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I do feel someone's watching me. What a start to the evening. Thank you to the young trio, Faith, Shania, and Chris, for that very spirited performance, and to this wonderful baritone voice you heard, who's no stranger to the Opera House stage, actor and singer Varun. He will join the ensemble towards the end of the evening for another performance that promises to be an evening of magic, mischief, and a hint of mystery. My name is Asad Lalji. I am the curator here at the Royal Opera House and the CEO of Avid Learning. On behalf of the royal family of Gondal, Ashish Doshi, honorary director, and myself, welcome to India's only surviving opera house and your city's very own cultural crown jewel. Tonight we're here to celebrate not just a book, but a visionary whose imagination has long enchanted audiences across stages, festivals, and now the page. Over the past 15 years, I've had the pleasure of collaborating with Dr. Sanjoy K. Roy on numerous occasions. He has been a mentor, sometimes a tormentor, supporter, friend, whose energy, creativity, and generosity of spirit have inspired so many of us in the arts. Tonight, we're here to celebrate a new chapter in this remarkable journey. In true Sanjoy fashion, the evening brings to you words, music, voices, conversation, all things he loves most. And as the conversation between Sanjoy and novelist and columnist Shobhaa unravels the stories from the stories, experience them through the reading by artistic director, theatre producer, and actor Shernaz Patel, actor Deepika Amin, who will bring the book's adventures, humor, and intrigues to life. Tonight, we continue our long-standing association with HarperCollins publishers in India, and that brings me to the task at hand. Avid Learning and the Royal Opera House Mumbai and HarperCollins celebrate the Mumbai launch of There Is a Ghost in My Room by author and managing director, Teamwork Arts, Sanjoy K. Roy. And with that, I leave the spooky stage to you and invite publisher HarperCollins, Udayan Mitra, to take this evening forward. Thank you all for being here and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Real pleasure to be back at Royal Opera House, perhaps my most favorite venue in all of India, and to be collaborating again with Avid Learning on the launch of this very, very special book. My name is Udayan Mitra. I am executive publisher at HarperCollins India. And very proud moment for us today as we launch in Bombay or Mumbai, Sanjoy K. Roy's wonderful memoir, There's a Ghost in My Room. You've seen the video already. You'll hear more about the book in a bit. I would like to talk a little bit about the book, just very briefly. Sanjoy, as you will know, is managing director of Teamwork Arts, which organizes over 40 literature, arts, cultural festivals around the world, including the Jaipur Literature Festival. He's also founder trustee of Salam Balak Trust, which works with underprivileged children in Delhi. Now, Sanjoy has had a remarkable life, and so his memoir was always going to be remarkable. He's had a life in theater, he's had a life in the arts, he's had a life as a producer of television shows, and then the whole arts and cultural, producing the arts and cultural festivals, which has been a long, long journey that's taken him across the world, all over India, and then across the world, Europe, America, the Far East, Jerusalem. And the book travels to all of these places, many of these places. And there are wonderful stories associated with each of the places, a lot of history. But what lends that extra dimension to the book is that Sanjoy has this uncanny ability, and he's had this ability from his childhood. The first incident that he recounts in the book takes place in his ancestral home in Calcutta when he's 5 years old. He's always had this ability to sense the supernatural, sometimes see the supernatural, and definitely communicate with the supernatural. As he puts it, his antenna is perhaps sharper than most of us in this room who don't have the privilege of sensing the supernatural or seeing the supernatural. But he does. And sometimes it's properly horrific, as you might imagine. Sometimes not so, because sometimes the beings from the other world that he sees are not malevolent at all. They are benign, sometimes they're helpful. And it's a variety of encounters that he recounts in this book. I will not tell you more about this because we're going to have a lovely discussion between Sanjoy and Shobhaa. But what I do want to tell you as a publisher is that the book is out now in print in India. It is available as an ebook and an audiobook. The audiobook has just come out. It's available as an ebook and audiobook all over the world. The print edition will be available in international markets in 2 to 3 months. And we are looking at several language editions as well. So everybody's going to get a chance to read this book. It's a remarkable memoir. It's a very unusual memoir. And again, very, very proud for us at HarperCollins to have published it. I won't take more time. We have a lovely evening lined up for you, and you've already had little glimpses of performances. I want to call on stage some very special people for the formal launch of the book. First of all, the author, Sanjoy K. Author, columnist, opinion maker, Shobhaa, and a very special person, chairperson and founder of Avid Learning, Mrs. Madhu Ruya. And may I have back on stage the one and only Asad Lalji.
Hi, may I request Shernaz Patel to come and read from the author's note?
My father, a skeptic, acknowledged Ma Durga and the many deities in the Hindu pantheon, but didn't quite know what to do when it came to religion and ritual. It was my mother who was the family druid, having grown up in a home steeped in superstition that boasted of a 300-year-old family deity. My childhood years were spent playing with the gods and goddesses, immersing myself in family rituals, conjuring up bhog, and putting the gods to sleep at night in their own tiny beds. As I grew older, I became like Pa, my father, more of a skeptic than a believer. The death of a favorite dog had me move away from the notion of God completely, only to return to the acceptance of a higher universal energy in later years, once I sorted out my antenna. Guided in part by Punita's belief in universal energy and that of an ascended master, Gurudev. When preparing my horoscope, the family pundit had predicted that I would grow up to be a priest or a lawyer, which seemed mostly acceptable to my family, who were indulgent of my spiritual bent of mind. As it turned out, neither prediction was borne out by reality. I did study law for 5 semesters, thanks to notes by Shobhaa Agarwal and tutorials by Shruti Tina Kumari, who primed me for the exams. But during one of the tests, I needed to take a dump. And the choice was between the law faculty loo, which was beyond horrific, or the washrooms of the Oberoi maidens. Maidens won, and that put to rest the idea of my becoming a lawyer. The universe is an enigma. We know very little about the world outside, and even less about our own abilities to communicate with the other world. But ESP is a reality, as is the notion of sixth sense or instinct. It's instinct that has led me to take most of my decisions, from making friends and engaging in relationships to working with business partners and accepting projects, and sometimes saying a firm no to what appeared to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In most cases, these decisions have stood me in good stead. Over the years, the paranormal has blended into our lives, enhanced by Punita's own experimentation with the occult and her understanding of healing energies. I have seen, sensed, and interacted with otherworldly forms, and have encountered the supernatural in many forms. Spirits, spooks, eerie presences, an oppressive feeling of dread, a premonition, as well as being protected from many a danger by the unknown. Spooks don't necessarily jump out at you in the most expected of places. I haven't chanced upon a ghost or a ghoul in the Valley of the Kings or Queens, in the pyramids of Giza, at the Temple of Thebes, or the caves of Cappadocia. But I have experienced them in more ordinary settings. In a vacant plot of land, on a tree outside the bedroom window, at home, or on a riverbank. While I pretend to take these in my supposedly cool stride, I still jump out of my skin in terror when faced with an unexpected and uninvited apparition. For the most part, I am uncomfortable with the messages that I receive from the universe, which I'm expected to convey to unsuspecting folks. My stories are my reality, or certainly an interpretation of events that Punita and I and our larger circle of family and friends have experienced. How much has been reimagined from our peculiar perspectives is difficult to say. What I do know is that through the good and the bad, the horror and the madness, we have ultimately always felt protected, be it by the handprints of our spiritual guides who are there to reassure us, or by the positive energy that abounds around us. I am neither a soothsayer, nor am I steeped in the occult. I do not predict people's future or delve into their past. I am neither mystic nor skeptic. And so, as you journey with me through time and place and through different dimensions, I leave you to draw your own conclusions, with the hope that when you look around, you will realize that we don't quite have an understanding of the many dimensions we inhabit, and that in living our lives, we should embrace the miracles that happen around us every day and be grateful for what we have.
Thank you, Shernaz, for that wonderful reading, giving us an insight of what's to come. And now, finally, you won't see any of us anymore, the man you've been waiting for, Sanjoy K. Roy, in conversation with novelist and columnist Shobhaa. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Let's start with a confession, mine, not yours. I have known Sanjoy, his beautiful wife Punita, their beautiful sons Avik and Aditya, their beautiful daughter-in-law Parul. I have traveled the world with them for the last many years. I could never ever have imagined that Sanjoy would write a book like this, so completely unusual and frankly terrifying. Ever since I've read the book, I've spent sleepless nights. I keep seeing ghosts everywhere. So here comes the first question, Sanjoy. You call yourself a skeptic, but the book, as you have emphasized, is non-fiction. It's what you have lived. What would make someone write a memoir, a debut book, using ghosts as a way of narrating the story of your life? A story for most of us in this room, a cathedral boy, a St. Stephen scholar, a man of the world. And then comes this book. What motivated you to write it in this format?
You know, this is a funny story, but first, Shobhaa, it's such a honor and pleasure to have you in conversation with me as opposed to the other way, and to have Shernaz read and Varun and the wonderful September girls, and we'll hear Deepika very soon. And thank you all for being here. There's family, there's friends, there's former board members, there's present board members. So this is a special occasion, and of course to Avid, Asad, and the Royal Opera House, and Madhuruya. It was, you know, like most things, this is really an accidental, I'm an accidental writer. I never wanted to write a book. I'm a reader. You all write. You need people to read. I'm a reader. I read about 6 or 7 books at a time, and that's what I love to do. I don't watch television. I watch very few films. And it started with a couple of publishers sort of coming to me and saying, you know, will you write a book? And I'm like, no, I won't. And then a publisher came in with a 3-book deal and said, you know, we really want you to do this, and, you know, here's a 3-book deal. And I said, no way, I have nothing to write. And I sort of passed this all on. I called on to my trusted friend and guide, Himali, from a suitable agency. And I said, Himali, can you please take over all of these queries and, you know, just tell them I have nothing to say and there's nothing to write. And, you know, tell them in 2035 or 37, I will consider writing a book. And then she and Ranjana, in a series of conversations in the office, kept saying, actually, why don't you think about seriously writing this? Because people would like to know. And I said, people would like to know what? I will be bored with writing about, you know, my life. And then as we were talking, I said, you know, if at all, should I write about this, about these incidents? And we were sitting around our sort of lunch table, and Himali and Ranjana looked at each other and said, this is it. This is what you need to do. And I said, okay. And fast forward, now the book is written. And the other day, Amala Singh, who you know, calls me and says, Sanjoy, this is so brave of you. I have so many stories which I've never told people because people think that I'm mad if I tell them these stories. How did you have the courage to write this? So I said, Mala, anyway, everybody thinks I'm mad. So how does this happen? I mean, there's no problem. I'm happy to write it. And that's how the book came about.
Interestingly and scarily, your book ends in Valladolid, in Spain, where you have a specific kind of vision and encounter, the lanterns, the crossing of the bridge. And not that long ago, just a few months ago, we were at Valladolid together. And I'm thinking to myself, did all of this happen in the same hotel that we were staying in? Did it?
Not in the fancy hotel we were staying in.
Okay.
The first time that I went there, this was about 24 or 25 years ago, there weren't these kind of hotels. There was the university, which is stunning. If you remember the building that we went for lunch, it was that at the back, which is actually the oldest part of the city and one of the first buildings that were constructed in 14, whatever it was. So that's where this particular haunting happened.
But there are hauntings and hauntings. There are hauntings which start in your childhood. There are hauntings that follow you to Delhi, from home to home. There are hauntings that happen in the most unexpected of places, but they're absolutely real. For you, they are, I mean, for a lot of us out there, we'll be kind of wondering, is it all kind of your imagination? But no, you talk emphatically that each one of us has a psychic something when we are born, and maybe at some point we lose touch with that, and therefore we lose that connection to another dimension. So do you believe that if all of us started to reconnect, we will all be seeing ghosts and apparitions and people, you call them spiritual guides, who, in fact, in the book, your spiritual guides, your premonitions have saved your life, your wife's life, your son's life, even the cat in your home. So tell me about this. Every single person you believe comes with this very sensitive side, which they then, what? It goes away because you get too busy, or?
Absolutely, Shobha, and I think you yourself have followed this. And, instinct, what we call gut instinct, that earlier we used to say is an instinct or a third sense or some other. Today, science itself is now sort of saying that, yes, gut instinct is really where your gut brain is. We tend to be so rational in our thought process that we ignore the instinct and we say, I still do. I still am a skeptic. So if I'm looking at Google Map, which is saying go straight, and my instinct to say go right, more times than other, I sort of go straight and get stuck in a traffic jam. So we all have instincts. And I remember Punita's transcended or ascended master said, you need to fix your antenna and you'll get messages, much clearer. So there's the messages, there's the instinct that we have, and of course then there's the ghostly sightings. And I don't know, maybe it's a bong thing. A cousin called me a little while ago. I was in Goa taking the flight. Flight was late, and she called and she said, maybe this is a Guptubadi, Mullikbadi. Many of my uncles and cousins from Mullikbadi, Bhawanipur are here. This is really and Mr. Day will know, Dilip Da will know, this is a Bengali thing. We have a few obsessions. One is khabar, which is food. The other is paikhana, which is, taking a dump, as you heard Shernaz say. And the third is having this communication with the other.
Not just that, from what I hear, because when your book came to the home, of course he pounced on it, as he does on every book that comes to the house. And he said he's absolutely right. We have a whole hierarchy of ghosts. There are categories of ghosts that every Bengali family believes in. They all have names and identities. So it'll be interesting to share some of those names and identities as you remember them from your childhood with the audience here, who may not be aware that the ghosts have very strong and very individualistic presence in Bengali homes.
So if say, for example, when Dilip Da married you, and he wanted, say, a rasgulla, and you just sat there, but your arm extended, 3 feet to pick up the rasgulla, then you would have been a petni. So petni is, a kind of woman ghost. And then there's a shachunni. A shachunni is a ghost who walks, whose, feet are, it's like a chudel, equivalent of a chudel. And remember, bongs are fairly racist, and, we also do this whole divide thing. So then you have a Muslim ghost, which is a Melcha, I think, or a Melchi or whatever. So
bachelor ghost too. The frustrated bachelor ghost.
You have a bachelor. So there's names, and in the writing of this book, when I was researching ghosts, because they keep popping up every now and then, in the most unusual of places. I mean, who would have thought that I saw a ghost in Switzerland? I mean, it's the most ordered existence for anybody. But there was this ghost. So when I was researching, so who are the kinds of ghosts there? They have, again, like us, a whole variety. There's a forest ghost, and there's a house ghost, and there's a naughty ghost, and there's an evil ghost, and there's a woodcutter ghost. So, there are all of these hierarchical ghosts, and I'm sure in Marathi kingdoms they're the same.
But when you talk about these very vividly described experiences, some near-death ones as well, accidents that could have been prevented, and also your wife's spiritual guide, who then tells her at one point to chant a certain mantra because Kali needs to be somehow appeased. So that incident I found particularly fascinating, if you'd like to share that.
So this is in our Safdarjung home. We had moved from Tughlaq Road to Safdarjung. And in our Safdarjung, for those of you who've lived in Delhi or know Delhi, you'll know that Green Park and Safdarjung and Hoskas were built on graveyards of old empires. And it's pretty much when developers started digging up these places, they forgot that they were really digging up old graveyards and souls, etc. And we used to have a peepal tree outside our bedroom, which was recessed right at the back of the house, and which used to be pretty infested with ghouls and ghosts of the not happy soul types who used to come and hang in the corner of the room and want to have conversations with me and in languages that I didn't necessarily understand. But what happened after our youngest son was born, Avik was born, he used to wake up fairly regularly in the middle of the night, screaming, saying, "Wo aa rahi hai." So he was about 2.5. And the bed sheet and the pillow covers were streaked with blood. And this happened, again and again and again and again. And pretty much like all parents, we were quite freaked out. So we took him to Preeti Pargal, our pediatrician, Avik's pediatrician, took him to other doctors. Is there a nosebleed? Is there a mouth bleed, etc.? No sign of any of this. And then this friend of ours, Madhav, a college pal of mine from Stevens, he sort of came to Punita one day and said, you need to do this mantra. He was a great Kali Bhakt. Kali was really fond of him. She wants him back. So you need to do this mantra. And then over 3 months, and Punita was a total non-believer of this kind of mumbo-jumbo at that point of time, but she did do this mantra as any mother would in desperation. And then it sort of ceased. And then a couple of years later, we were in Narkhanda, and it's a place up in the mountains that Punita and I had often been. We were doing work there, we'd shot there, we'd stayed in the villages. And in this particular time, when we drove into Narkhanda, there's a temple right there in the village as you turn around the corner. And we drove into Narkhanda, and Avik started saying, "Wo gandi wali hai." And we said, no, this is such a benign, beautiful Ish Devta of this area. And he kept saying, "Gandhi wali hai." Didn't get out of bed for 5 days. We were snowed under. There was a snowstorm. We couldn't leave Narkhanda. We were worried. And on the last day, this villager friend of ours came up and said, "I heard you were here. You haven't come to see us. We have apples and chai. Come down." And so we go down, and we are sitting on his balcony overlooking the valley and another mountain. And Avik turns around and points to this mountain and said, "Wo Gaddi Wali," on the other side. And remember, this is a place that we've often been to, and we'd never seen this. And I asked the villager, I said, "What is that temple?" And he said, "That's a place where sacrifices used to happen, in an earlier time." And it hadn't registered before Avik pointed it out.
You said that Punita did not believe at that point in what you call mumbo jumbo. But at some stage, she's almost, when you talk about her later in the book, it's like she's become a medium and she is receiving instructions, messages, and also telling the ghosts that are bothering whosoever it may be, very politely to just leave you guys alone and get lost. And they seem to obey her and listen to her. And this has happened, it happens frequently through the book, that you appeal to your wife and say, "Listen, I can't sleep," and just get rid of that one or the other ghost and a few other ghosts. Now, does it run in families, or did she then become acutely aware that she possesses something which most other people would not recognize as a special, is it a special power? And does it run in families? Apart from one son of yours, everyone seems to be completely listening to instructions.
So, as I said, I've always been a skeptic. And Punita, when she started her spiritual journey, she and Urmila, they began this together. And then she went on to do Reiki. She became a medium and started doing all of this, let's call a spirit and, have a conversation. Except that every time they called the person, whoever it was, forgot that they had to go back. And as it happens, it seems that I attract dark energies. Punita is the healer, so we're a perfect combination in that sense. But the point is, all of these other not-so-happy souls hang around wanting to have a conversation with me, and I have little interest in doing that. I'm sure they have a message to give, but my thing is go and give it to somebody else because, I need to sleep right now. This is Nini time. And there have been times, Avik has come to our room and said, "Papa, ya, just look what's on the ceiling." And I'm like, Avik, it's 3 o'clock in the night. Why do we have to engage with a, whatever, with a thing, orb that's floating around on the ceiling, looking all red and angry? I said, then I tell Punita, do something, tell them to go away. And, more and more she continues to do that. So she's the healer. She's able to send them love and light to be able to, help them on their way. I have no such interest or enthusiasm about doing any of the above.
There is an incident where you feel that you are actually having a heart attack, that you can't breathe and you are terrified and gasping. Now, that's a very real syndrome. It's not that you're imagining it. What was that incident about?
So this was in Jerusalem. For those of you who've been to Jerusalem, we used to do a festival there for many years, pre the horrors that have been happening now. This was in the early, late 2010s, etc. And I'd gone to the Mishkanet Shanamin, which is on the edge of what we now know as the Valley of Jahannam or Hell. And that's the valley where all of the refuse from the city, the lepers, the people who were outcast used to go and live there. It was a place of vermin, of total horror, and that's where the word Jahannam or hell comes from. And the Mishkanet Shanaman sort of overlooks this particular valley. And it's a stunning place, and we were looking at doing a Words on Water there. I don't know whether you came with us one year to that. And it was just an amazing place. So this particular place, which I later researched about, was built in the early 19th century. And I went to sleep, and I have a problem sleeping, so I do an eye mask, then I do a pillow, then I make sure that there's no light coming through any of the cracks in the door. I put off the lights in the corridor outside, all of this kind of, NACA stuff that I do. And so I was hoping to go to sleep, and then I just felt this presence, and it was trying to push itself into my body, my being, and the pressure was so immense and intense, and I was just totally frightened out of my wits because I had a possession story that happened earlier in Rishikesh, and that the horror of that still remained, and I was just wondering if this was going to be a repeat of that. And I couldn't resist this person. And finally, the lack of a better word, and apologies to you, Shobhaa, in the sense of being raped, and then finally you sort of give up at some point because you're just so completely overtaken that I just said, okay. And it sort of entered my being. And having entered my being, I could then get out of bed. So I got out of bed, put on the lights. I had just that afternoon come from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. There was a Syrian Christian priest from Kerala. He had taken me around. He had given me holy water. He had given me a rosary which had been blessed and a photograph of Mother Mary. So I took that out. I sprinkled holy water around my bed. I took out the beads, put it under my pillow. I took out the Mother Mary photograph, and I called Punita, and I said, Punita, this has happened. I don't know what it is. I have so many days left here. Do something. Ask Gurudev what happened. And then she did. And the funny thing is, you'll have to read it in the book, that when I researched it in the writing of this book, thanks to Udayan and the editors, every time sending me back the chapters saying, do you want to set the background to this? And do you want to explain how this came about? And in my research, I sort of came to understand what happened then, which I did not understand all of these years till I researched. And similarly with Valladolid, which you referred to, the same thing happened. I was in this old part of the university building, one of the first buildings in Valladolid, and I had got into bed, I put off the lights, I hadn't yet put my eye mask on, and I felt something had entered the room, so I thought it's room service or, whatever, housekeeping. So I sat up and I said, can I help? And then I was looking at the person standing at the alcove, pretty much like an alcove like this. And as I scanned down, I said, no hands. And then I looked down further and I'm going, no legs either. And then I started focusing on the face and I'm going, oops, no neck. This is not a good thing. And in my head it was, should I put on the light? Should I jump out of bed? But it was one of those few times, Shobhaa, that I wasn't terrified out of my mind. And this, whatever it was looking at me. And as I said, I was sort of looking at it, sort of analyzing, normally by which time I'd be shrieking, but I wasn't. And then when I looked away to turn the light off, realizing that the light was, if I was a Sachunni, I could have put it on because it was quite far. I then turned back and it had disappeared, but it had gone and stood next to the window with moonlight streaming down, sort of literally illuminating it in different ways. And again, when I was researching the chapter and Udayan said, what set the stage, set the background, give us the history. And I was researching it, I sent off to the university, to the rector and the vice chancellor. I said, can you send me any history about the university? And they sent me this writing. I realized who these people were, or who this person was who had come to visit me. Valladolid was the erstwhile capital of Spain. It's where Ferdinand meets Isabella. They get married. They set up what we now know, or what was then the Spanish Empire. But they also set up the Inquisition. And one of the groups of people who had been persecuted was this group of young mendicants who used to stay on the bridge just across. And perhaps, sort of, now I'm doing 1 + 1 into 111. Perhaps it was one of them who came to visit.
You talked about exorcism as well. You said that at one point you felt you were possessed. And the exorcism was conducted how and by whom? And how did it feel right after? Did you feel lighter? Did you feel like, oh my God, if all the ghosts in my life are exorcised, maybe I'm going to miss them? Because you've lived with them since you were a kid.
Well, in this case, what had happened, there's this possession story. It happens in Rishikesh. You can read it in the book. And it's not that this is what I've recounted from what everybody shared with me. And Punita, just the other day, Punita and Tarun Gitan was saying that what I've written in the book was only 10% as horrific of what actually transpired. So in the telling of the story of what I've understood, I got possessed. I wanted to throw myself under a bus at every point. We were headed back from Rishikesh to Delhi. I kept leaping off, sort of levitating off the bus seat. And there were 5 of our friends, Tarun and Mohit and Larry and Viraj, who's sitting somewhere here, trying to hold me down, even while he was eating a samosa, which I'll never forgive him for. And they sort of stopped at a place and, they got the doctors to give me a sedative injection. But through the time, I kept sort of levitating off the seat. And even when we got to Delhi, they took me straight to Ashlok, did an EEG. It all seemed fine. But for about 10 days, I was sort of mostly out of it completely. And it's about the 10th or 14th day or whatever. I don't know what happened, but it was something that I was like, I'm so bored of being in this situation. And that was it. I was out of it. It wasn't any great, beating of whatever or sprinkling of stuff. It was just that. And I snapped out of it. And I was back in office the next day like nothing had ever happened, except that they then recounted, including eating the samosa, which you will not be forgiven for, the story behind it.
A lot of people who may have experimented at some stage in their lives with drugs, LSD, hallucinogenic, the experiences sound uncannily similar. So you weren't tripping. You were in Rishikesh.
No. Well, the only time Punita and I tripped where Mohit baked us a hash brownie cake. We were up in the mountains. Viraj was there as well. And Punita and my soul went to Brahma. Sort of it went together kind of thing. It was the most bizarre thing. And then collectively, because we had all sort of been on the same hash cake, bizarrely, we all tripped into the abyss. So all 3 of us, Viraj, Punita and I, up in the mountains, I forget where we were, Ranikhet, I think, we were tripping into the abyss. But in this case, nothing, no magic mushroom, nothing.
Goa, for example, was particularly scary. What happened there? Even though all of you, or you and Puneet, ignored the premonitions, which could have cost you and her your lives. So maybe the audience would like to understand a little of that warning that was ignored.
So, I have my sister-in-law 25, 30 years ago sort of passed on her soothsayer or her face reader to us. I call him Khopri because he reads faces. He's actually Shastriji. So Shastriji tends to come from wherever he comes from. I think he comes from...
Varanasi, I think.
No, I think he comes from someplace near anyway, someplace...
He still visits you twice a year.
Yeah, someplace south of India. I forget the name of the place for a second. So he came to me at a time... He normally comes just before Navratra and then says, blah, 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 and so on and so forth, and I have to do this puja or that puja, and, finds his way away. And I'm always happy to listen to people like that because I ask him, is Modi going to be re-elected? When are we going to be relieved? All of this stuff. And in this
what did he tell you about Modi? We're all interested.
I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that one later. And so this time he came outside of the period that he normally comes, and he says, 6 June ko aap kahan honge? So I said, why? He said, nahi, koi aise koi baat nahi. Where will you be? And so I said, we go to Goa, we go to Taj Holiday Village, as we all did at that point of time. So he said, achha. He said, but, do you need to go? I said, listen, it's the kids' holiday time every year. That's the place we go. We have our villa. You guys used to have your villa. Tarun. So, yes, we will be going. So he said, achha. I said, why? Nahi, koi baat. So this continued. Sort of, he said, then he said, okay, on the 6th of June, if you're going to be there, don't step out. Yeah. And I said, why? He said, no reason whatsoever. And then he said, my guru, meaning his guru, had told him that he must come and say this to me, that we shouldn't step out. And every time I asked him why, he said, no, it's okay. We forgot. We were in Goa, we forgot. As usual, you're drinking.
Quite a lot, according to the book.
Yes.
From the time you'd woken up, more or less.
From the time we woke up, yes. And that's what you do in Goa, I suppose. And it was the 6th of June. I won't give you the whole story, but I'll cut to the chase and you can read it. Again, Viraj featured in it prominently. There was this big accident, and Punita had an accident. And the funny thing was that as we were getting up to leave from accident number 1, which had already happened, which we were party to, there was Viraj, Manika, and me on a bike, and Tarun, Geetan, and Punita on a bike. Punita jumped off just as we were about to leave and came to me, tapped me on my shoulder and said, no, you go to that bike. I said, why? She said, no, you just go to that bike. So I went with Tarun and Geetan, and Tarun told Viraj, boss, we've been through this really problematic night. Go slow. The first rains had come, and you know how beautiful that is. There was steam rising up from, the baked road. There was mist. There was that early morning mist that had come in. The oil slick had come up. And Viraj sped off into the night. And as we approached the Taj Holiday Village turning, we see this bike with its wheels spinning, 3 bodies on all 3 sides, one being Punita, who had started hemorrhaging, and Manika and Viraj. And anyway, long story, we then go to the hospital. Now we're used to it because we've already one accident down. We get to the hospital, Shobhaa, and the first person who had the accident is on one bed in emergency. The second person, there was the Taj general manager who was passing by, saw us, stopped and said, can I help? And I'll take this person to Bambolim. He was in the next bed because he had pulled the stretcher out, fallen into the gutter. And on the third bed was the restaurant owner, whose restaurant we were, who had followed this person who had an accident and driven into a herd of buffaloes was in the third bed, and now Punita was in the fourth bed. And all of this on the 6th of June. And when Khopri or Shastriji came back, he said, you know, I had no choice but to do a prayer, because the only person who can take the karma of the husband or the man is actually the wife. Of course, Aditya, our eldest son, as Probir will tell you, who lectures us a lot, was like, how can you even say that? Do you know how misogynistic this sounds? But this is what he said. He said, that's what I did, because if the accident had happened to you, you would have lost a limb or a whatever. And so I had to do this. And the funny thing, Shobhaa, just recently, Punita's just come out of having encephalitis and meningitis and blah, blah. And we were going to Canada. He again came to me and he said, Punita ko aap saath mat le jana.
I hope you listened this time.
And again, I ignored him. And again, we went to Canada and she fell really ill.
There you go. But when you have this belief in this gentleman, and he's giving you specific dates, like 6th of June, now he told you don't go to Canada. And I did meet Punita when she was recovering. And she is still very fragile. Are you challenging fate, or are you saying, I'm that much of a skeptic, I do believe, but I also don't believe, and I'm going to test it one more time? What is it that makes you do this?
You know, I don't know whether Probir, my brother, is in the audience, but it's all his fault, because he used to be the one who used to be the leader when we were kids and feed me all sorts of weird stuff. But he's the scientist, economist, whatever, nuclear thingamajig. So can you imagine in a family where everybody is playing rational, I'm like listening to some soothsayer saying ye karo or wo karo. I mean, it's beyond my sort of realm of understanding. And I'm basically at heart, a skeptic. So even when I listen to him with one ear, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And,
So we'll end this, because they should really, we've given them more than a flavor of what the book is about, and we have tantalized them enough. We should end it with the story about your cat, the one who's your soul guide. There may be a lot of cat lovers in the audience, and that you have a very strong bond with all of them, and you do also believe they live in another dimension that maybe we don't always understand when they are trying to tell us something. So that particular incident with your cat, Pudi.
So Paddy, so as all of you know, cats are actually aliens. If you watch Men in Black, you'll know that completely for anybody who has a cat. In this case, Paddy, who's our firstborn, and the kids get really upset the fact that we've got 3 cats and 4 dogs. Dogs are always good, welcome in the house. Cats were never welcome. But Paddy, we were told recently, is like our soul guide, and the other 2 cats are just beautiful cats. So that's the difference. Those 2 are pretty cats. Paddy is the soul guide. And it's something, he's so, apart from being endearing as cats are, he came as a feral cat during COVID to us. And slowly, very slowly, we sort of inched him into the house because he was abandoned. And then once a monkey was trying to steal him, and then we realized, just bring him into the house totally. And then when he ran away once, Punita was heartbroken. But when she checked as to what this affinity was and why is it that we feel so impassioned or empathetic to him, Punita's ascended master said, he is now your soul guide. And in many ways, it's sort of, if you remember in many of the stories in Sabdajang, what used to happen is when I was having a bath, the mirror used to steam over, but one used to see the hand imprint of 2 skeletal hands. And that really used to be quite freaky, because you're having a bath, you're in a different space, and then you suddenly see these imprints, which is like weird. So we asked, and they said, no, these are the good guys. These are your spirit guys just saying to you that don't worry, these are difficult times, and you're being looked after. So now I don't see those any longer, but there is Paddy.
Absolutely fascinating, Sanjoy. I thought I knew you and your family, but clearly I know nothing, because this was a dimension that came to me like an apparition. Suddenly I'm going through this book, I'm riveted, fascinated, I couldn't keep it down. And
Before we go to question answers,
yeah,
let's...
yeah, and I'm actually, you've triggered maybe something within me that I'm wondering about my own childhood, and like Mala said to you, whether each one of us needs to question something within ourselves, that are there areas that we don't want to accept, and maybe something to...
But you know that, and I'm sure your next book is going to be pretty much
about ghosts.
Well, not so much ghosts, but about
I'm not sure. I know many in real life. I'm not sure I want to write a book about them. But yes, we're going to have a...
We're going to have a last
special,
reading before we open
reading.
it up for question and answers. Deepika and Charu are both here. Deepika and Charu with Mohit and I set up Teamwork Arts. Thank you all very much, or Teamwork Films in those days. Thank you very much, Deepika.
And get your questions ready. And over to Deepika.
Hello, everyone. There's a reason why I chose this particular story to read. Sanjoy and I go back a long way. We used to do theatre together in Barry John's theatre group, TAG. And then later on, I was one of the 5 people who were part of Teamwork Arts, Sanjoy, Mohit, Charu, Rituraj, and me. And happy to be mentioned in the book several times, Deepika Deshpande. And the first time I met Sanjoy, and for many, many years, he lived in this particular place, in Tughlaq Road. And it was this old, sprawling Lutyens bungalow with a large backyard where we used to store our costumes of the play in the outhouse. Once we were preparing the sets for one of our shoots, an urgent shoot it was, and the sets were being made all night. The carpenters and painters were working there. So Charu and I stayed over at Sanjoy's place. We stayed in one of the side rooms. You know, it was a big, rambling bungalow. And every now and then we would wrap our blankets around ourselves to go and see how the work was progressing. And it was truly spooky because it was this big old house, lonely, dark, and we were holding hands and walking and saying, my God, what a bhoot bangla this is. So we didn't actually see anything spooky. I guess that's because we did not have the antenna that Sanjoy has. Well, reading what he has written, I am very glad that I don't have an antenna. So here goes. Our new home was in Lutyens, Delhi, a 3-acre estate that sat at the intersection of Safdarjung Road, Prithviraj Road, and Tughlaq Road. The house had a sweeping driveway with separate entry and exit gates, an outhouse which doubled as Pa's office, and extensive lawns that stretched out at the back. Recessed at the far ends were garages and staff quarters to accommodate the mali, the dhobi, and the cook. Enormous master bedrooms with 2 attached bathrooms flanked the drawing room. In earlier times, they had served the Bada Sahab and his Mem Sahab, each tended to separately by their personal staff. In retrospect, these were excellent arrangements that I suspect led to far less acrimony between couples than what we experience these days with shared bathroom facilities and differing standards of order and hygiene. The family room had a false ceiling, a working air conditioner, and it doubled as my bedroom at night. The back veranda had long been converted into a dining area from where you could step out onto the lawns where peacocks roamed, squirrels scampered, and the mango and jamun trees cast a magical spell in the winter night. At the end of the driveway, secluded by tall bushes and trees, Riaz Bhai built sets for TAG's theatre productions designed by Barry John. We also made sets for the show Telefun that needed outlandish props, which were transported to different cities where we video recorded the episodes. At that time, turntables and LP record players had been consigned to history, and we had a brand new cassette player, which had an automatic stop function. It was the sound of this stop button clicking back into place that may have been the cause of my nightmares. Many a night, I was jolted awake with the sense of an ominous presence looming above me, right next to my bed. I would struggle to break free, my mouth stretching wide open in a scream that remained stuck in my throat, even as a dark, ginormous energy filled the room, sucking out the oxygen from my lungs. Though I tried screaming for help, I remained paralyzed, my hair standing on end, sweat beading down my forehead as I lay helpless, consumed by the presence of this spirit, which stared at me unmoving, its blood-red eyes awash with anger. Fighting off my sleep paralysis, I would scramble to turn on the lights, and the presence would fade away. I would pad through the house, which was quiet, air coolers humming in the distance, the guard on his duty round, and my parents fast asleep. I would try and calm down by drinking cold water, switching on as many lights as possible, and checking all the rooms and bathrooms before reluctantly getting back into bed. These visitations happened at regular intervals over many months. And it was some years later, when I was jolted awake during a similar episode, that I wondered if it was the cassette player making the sound of the click as the automatic switch turned the system off that triggered my deep-seated fear.
Questions? I don't know whether Asad is... Oh, there are mics. And some
We
house
need
lights.
the house lights on, please, so we can see the...
If we can see. And also on the balcony, I don't know whether we ever...
And if you can just please identify yourselves.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I am instantly regretting buying the book. I should have waited for the conversation because I'm really terrified. How should I read this book now? But jokes apart, I'm Sanket Kulkarni. Such an honor to have you both here. I had a question for Sanjoy. Is it about how sensitive one is? Even one may kind of say that, no, I'm more resilient to such paranormal things, but subconsciously, are we really sensitive psychologically that such beings do tend to visit you? Is it that it's just that it's not just about the antenna, it's about how sensitive one is to these experiences or these anecdotes during our formative years?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yes, you need to be sensitive and sensitized, but also, you know, the funny thing is I have acute hearing, so, and many of my colleagues will whatever. So if we go to a hotel, they typically try and put me in the most corner room because I can tell when they pull the flush at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, you know, what are you doing at 2 o'clock in the morning? Go back to sleep kind of stuff. So I've got acute hearing. That may be one of the reasons. And I'm a good listener, and I love reading. So maybe it's a combination of all of that. And as my mamar bari, my two bomas, I don't know, what do you say for a boma? What's a boma? Mami? Mama? Mami. So my mommies and Topu Mama, whose bhalo name I've forgotten for a second, will tell you that it's pretty much part of the family tradition, you know, to say hi to those other things that go bump in the night. It's not unusual.
Punita is not Bengali, and she hasn't grown up with this. So where is it actually coming from? Or have you transferred it to your wife?
No, I think she made sense of this for us. I mean, you know, for me, none of this was at all an understanding that this is what I was seeing, you know. I used to get frightened, and I'm like, yeah, cool. I mean, you know, everybody gets frightened. You wake up in the middle of the night. It was not for me like I'm seeing something that's unusual. Yeah, I used to get terrified, but that's it. It's only later when she started, in many ways, interpreting. And the reason one got into this, or trying to fix one's antenna, was that I remember telling the boys one day, you know, your mom is on this journey. She's going to turn us into a cockroach at some point. So we better find out what is she doing with all of this spiritual stuff, so we have a guard.
But do you believe in an afterlife and rebirth and cycle of karmic births? I forgot to ask you that. But
I believe in karma. I believe that energies exist beyond this, and I believe that there is stuff that we don't understand. Is there afterlife? Well, I think the jury is out on that one.
Could I ask a question? Sangeeta here, Sangeeta Wadhwani.
Hi, stand, please, because I can't see. Not that we can see anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So I think as a child, I saw something that looked like an Egyptian mummy. I was a child in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, as we all know, the grade for real estate, it's like Bombay. So they were making buildings over graveyards, over all kinds of scary sort of geomantic spaces. So I saw this creature that looked like a bandaged Egyptian mummy. I was too young to know what an Egyptian mummy was. And I tried to look away from it, and it actually said, look at me. And here I'm a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, and I just screamed my lungs out. And my parents got out of their room, they switched on the light, and they saw something leaving the house. And I think I read about an Egyptian mummy when I migrated to Bombay, and I was reading an Archie comic or a Richie Rich or something, and they had this thing called the Egyptian mummy there. And I was like, Mummy, I've seen this as a baby. But what my question to you was, I remember a trip to Balsamand in Jodhpur with a fellow journalist. The animals, they have a forest attached to the property, and it's a very ancient property. The animals were howling the entire night. So we were struggling to sleep. My colleague had sleep paralysis. We were so scared we didn't want to be in separate rooms. So she said, come to my room. She had sleep paralysis. I was doing okay. But I could hear a wailing in the bathroom. And I walked to the bathroom, and I remembered Harry Potter. There is this bathroom ghost, that Myrtle, that's constantly flushing the toilet. I went in there and I yelled at her and I said, stop it, we're trying to sleep. And it stopped. So, I think there are certain parts of the world, like you're saying, where you have either gory history or violent incidents, where the energy, or ancient structures, like Rajasthan is full of them, where there are energies that you don't know how to manage. Now, what really intrigues me is when you say you're somewhat skeptical about Copri's predictions, but yet you're like a living example of someone with that antenna who picks up on all this extraterrestrial and, extrasensory. So I don't understand that paradox in you as a human being. You're so rational that you actually even take a chance on predictions, and yet you are an antenna for the extraterrestrial.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing. I can't explain it, but if somebody gives me a ghost story, and now so many people share their stories, I'm like still listening as a skeptic sometimes as to seriously. And the problem is that when I get a message, and if I get a message about somebody who I don't know, and Punita keeps saying, it's your responsibility to convey the message. Now, if there's somebody who you don't know and the message that you've got is, you've got cancer or you're going to have a heart attack, how do you convey that? So I sort of do this in a, oh, hi, and how are you doing? And I'm so glad that you've come here. And, why don't you go and get a medical checkup kind of stuff, without getting into the problem is that when that does come true, in this case, whoever I thought had, the message was that the person should get a cancer thing and had cancer, got in its first stage, and a heart thing, would have had a heart attack if they hadn't got a thingamajig. They then think that you know everything, past, present, and future, but I don't. I'm not a soothsayer. I have no idea. I've got that message at that point of time for that person. And similarly, all of these other things that go bump in the night and want to have a conversation with me, I'm not interested. I'm not a great, let's have a conversation and be friends. I'm like, bugger off. I don't have time for you. I want to sleep. And this is no, call my EA. Fix a time. I'm happy to have a conversation. It has to be in my schedule. This is not in my schedule.
But does the paradox bother you? The contradictions within yourself.
It's always a fight, right, Shobha? There's so many things that we always fight about within ourselves. Yes or no, believe or don't believe, God or no God. Even when, you go to, and I'm a great Durga Puja goer and believer, and, whether it's at Molik Bari or Guptu Bari or in our own in Gurgaon. But you then have this one step removed association with God, because at the end of the day, what is it that you're seeing or saying or understanding? So you're always in this halfway zone of should I trust my instinct or follow Google Map? So sometimes you follow Google Map and sometimes you follow your instinct.
Do you consult, would a ghost come and tell you about your next business decision?
Not a ghost, but instinct. And, you're saying this, it's so funny. So I remember we were in Scottsdale, Arizona. We were supposed to set up a new festival at the Scottsdale Arts Center. I think Microsoft or somebody was supposed to fund many hundreds of thousands. So everything was sorted out, everything. And I was there for the press conference. And our local partner, this lady, said something, and it just triggered an instinct. And I had to say, you're going to think that this is bizarre, but I'm really sorry. I'm going to cause you a lot of pain, but I can't go ahead with this. And I walked out of it. And it's happened again instinctively. We did the closing of the Commonwealth Games Arts Festival, which because of my long hair, I get invited to do stuff like this. So I designed it and directed it for them. And when we came back, because of the Delhi Commonwealth Games, the Delhi government kept coming to us and said, will you have to do this for us and do the torch relay? We were a deemed agency in the UK. And again, instinctively, I was like, stay away. And my colleagues kept saying, do you know how much of money you're walking away from? And I said, it doesn't matter. Just stay away. And all of the CBI inquiries followed. I mean, some of my former board members, Atul was one of the first people when they came to invest in us. I remember saying to that, when they said, we want to invest in team. I said, seriously? I mean, why would you want to do that? I mean, how are you going to get an exit at any point of time? And of course, the rest, as they say, is history. But yeah.
But you referred to your long hair. That has a story too, which is connected to a sensitive point in your life. It's connected to a superstition too.
Well, the long hair was really, Punita had this accident that we talked about. I hadn't cut my hair. We were running between hospitals. And our eldest son one day came to me and said, are you planning to grow your hair? So I said, why? So he says, because then you can't come to my school. And I'm going, yes! No more parent-teacher day, no more annual day, no more, sports day. Mama will tell you, when you go there, you're basically told by the teachers what a bad parent you are. So I'm like, this is it. I'm growing my hair. And because my hair has always been somewhat longer and black and white, people think I'm artistic and I can speak and, the rest
Sanjoy,
of history.
I have a message for you from your publisher. You need to go sign and sell some books. But I have no such problems at school with hair.
I thought you got a message from the divine.
I mean,
Just from the publisher.
Right now.
Oh my God, the timing was
HarperCollins is the
perfect.
divine in this case.
Okay,
They're the ones
all
who
right.
conjured up the book.
Well, thank you, Sanjoy and Shobhaa, for this wonderful discussion. Thank you to our incredible readers, Shernaz, Deepika, and Varun, for an evening that turns out to be thought-provoking, haunting, and also a little fun. This evening would not have been possible without our partners, HarperCollins, Udyan, Anand, Akriti. Sanjoy will be signing copies outside, so do get your copy. And lastly, the Opera House team and Avid Learning teams. And thank you to our audiences for being here in such great numbers. I know it may have been a little arduous getting in, but we wanted you to be comfortable. We have many more programs. We've got to plug a program we're doing tomorrow. We have the next FICCI Creative Economy Symposium, Cultural Continuum, happening at SR House. Anybody interested, just sign up on our website and come. And this brings to our closing with something we began with, which is music. So please, you all guys, welcome back the wonderful, talented actor and singer Varun Narayan, who will now join the September sisters, Faith and Shania Vaz, and Chris Fernandez for one final performance. So let's gather the voices, swirl, and perhaps send a shiver down their spine as we wrap up the celebration on a hauntingly high note. Thank you all for being here. Enjoy the performance and please sing along.
And just a very big thank you to Shobhaa Dey for doing this and all of you for coming. All my friends, relatives, Sohela, thank you, Rahul, thank you. And thank you all. Thank you, Asad.
Something strange in your neighborhood. Who you gonna call?
Ghostbusters.
If there's something weird and it don't look good, who you gonna call? Say it with us now.
Ghostbusters.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Ghostbusters.
If you see things running through your head, who you gonna call?
Ghostbusters.
An invisible man sleeping in your bed. Yeah, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters. ain't afraid of no ghosts. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Who you gonna call?
Ghostbusters!
If you're all alone, pick up the phone and call Ghostbusters. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. I hear he likes the girls. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Even